So I obtained my bachelor degree in mathematics from Brunel University. I took a year out, just working. Um, I worked at Apple for 5.5 years throughout like my whole education, from just before I started university. So I took a year out and then I decided to do a master's in cybersecurity. The reason was because my like thesis for my bachelor's degree was on the mathematics of blockchain and Bitcoin in particular. So I looked into a lot of elliptic curve cryptography, which really fascinated me. So I really wanted to learn more about sort of cryptography and the sort of cybersecurity scene. And then after doing my cybersecurity master's, I'm still in the process of finishing, but after doing that, I realized that maths was my passion. So I didn't want to continue going down the cybersecurity field. I sort of always gravitated towards maths and data. My thesis for my master's was on malware detection, like machine learning malware detection and like concept drift. And I spoke to my supervisor and I asked him to basically make it mathsy. So whether I could just apply it math statistical analysis on the data that came from the machine learning algorithms rather than doing a project in like API calls and stuff. So yeah, that was really fun. Got to work with like a big data set. And then after I was looking for a job, I sort of reached out to my network. I was looking around. I knew I wanted to get into data. I was a bit unfamiliar with like, the difference between data analyst, data scientist, data engineer, like what all of them entailed. So I attended a few like workshops. I reached out also to Chic and Code last year in April. Yeah, had a phone call, sort of seeing what direction I want to go into. Yeah, and then I ended up at Quantexa. My friend who I worked with at Apple referred me here. She also joined via a event from Chic and Code as well. So yeah, so that's how I got into Quantexa and what's led me here. I'm really passionate about data, and I love logic, problem solving, and just learning new things. The Quantexa Data Engineering Academy is all focused on the Quantexa platform. So by the end of completing it, you should be able to perform the standard data activities that are involved in the process of deploying the Quantexa platform. So it's essentially learning how to use the Quantexa libraries, how to use like configure the Quantexa tools. As soon as we start, so at this point, I am doing the technical foundations, which is basically an introduction to the academy. It introduces the document entity model, and the features of the platform, so like search, investigations, and scoring. And then after the foundations, we have 6 modules. Currently, I'm on the first module, working towards my first assessment. There's 3 assessments. Assessment 1 and assessment 2 have each got 2 parts to it. And then the third assessment is essentially the final assessment, where you will build your own Quantexa platform based on the data that you're given. So when I applied, I was going through the interview process. I found out that they use Scala/Spark at Quantexa, and I didn't know what it was, never heard of it. It was really daunting at first, but when you do, as part of your interview process, you get an assignment that you have to do in Scala and Spark. So that was like sort of the first time I had seen it before joining the academy. And yeah, it was a bit of hard work to get my head around it on my own. But the support that you get through the academy is completely different to when you're doing it on your own. Before joining Quantexa, I had good knowledge in Python, and also like mathematical modeling programs like MATLAB. Those were the only sort of experience that I have. But I always think of different languages as different programs as a different accent. So coding in general is like a language, but you know, your JavaScript and your Python and everything else, it's a different accent in the coding world. So the logic is more or less the same. It's just the syntaxes. So I try and apply that to Scala and Spark as I go along. But yeah, and in terms of what I'm looking most forward to is being able to navigate myself freely without having to. I know I always have to ask questions, and I think that's important to always ask questions because you're never going to know everything, but just being able and capable of being able to debug myself and having that sort of approach where I won't always need to ask a question at every move as I am right now with Scala and Spark. So yeah, I'm really excited to sort of learn it in depth, understand it, and apply it to the Quantexa platform. So my initial impressions is that I'm really impressed. I really enjoy the e-learning format. On Learn Upon, we have the modules that we have to get through, and as we go through the questions that sort of allow us to have further understanding, but also to make sure that we're not moving on without understanding what we've just gone through. There's also the Quantexa community, so if you have a question, you can go see whether someone else has had the same question, and it's essentially answered by anyone else in the community, but mostly by the ATLs, which are the Academy team leads. That's really useful. And then also we have the Quantexa documentation. That's essentially where all the libraries and the packages, the Quantexa libraries, packages, and tools are explained. So when I'm sort of going through on Scala, building like my codes and stuff, I use that a lot for reference to make sure that I understand. But the support so far has been amazing. We have support calls and something called Academy stand-ups every day. So that's where the Academy team leads essentially jump on a call, and you can speak to them about what issues you're facing, and they won't essentially give you the answer, but they'll help you think about things differently and approach everything in a different way. So they're really, really helpful. But yeah, as I'm doing this first module, I know I have all the tools. I just sort of need to make sure that I am applying myself to be using the tools. And yeah, it's all good.